Jan 6 legal memo reveals details of plan to overturn election. House committee member calls Trump guilty as sin and a one-man crime wave. As the investigation into the attack on the U.S. Capitol steadily yields more information about the events leading up to the 6th of January attack, a new memo has been released detailing a new angle on the Trump team's efforts to subvert the outcome of the 2020 election. The memo, written by attorney Kenneth Casebro, spells out a contorted multi-day plan to have Mike Pence take control of the electoral certification in the Senate, something the vice president ultimately refused to do despite intense pressure from the meanwhile, Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin, a member of the House 6th of January committee, has said that Donald Trump will get his comeuppance over the attack on the U.S. Capitol, suggesting that criminal charges may soon be brought against the former president. Mr. Raskin labeled Mr. Trump guilty as sin and called him a one-man crime wave in an interview with Salon. The Select Committee is set to begin its public hearings this month. Trump hits Letitia James over report that New York experienced net population decrease. Donald Trump knows exactly who to blame for figures from the federal government indicating that New York experienced a net population decrease between those who moved out of the state and those who moved there between 2019 to 2021, not counting births and deaths. In brief statement linking to the figures on Wednesday released through his Save America PAC, Mr. Trump laid the blame on Letitia James, the state's attorney general who is leading a fraud investigation into his. I believe that racist and corrupt AG James is pushing businesses and wealthy people to leave in. Why for friendly states? Not sustainable by NYS. He declared. Jail for Jan 6 father and son defendants. Daryl and Dan Johnson, a father and son who walked the halls of the Capitol during the 6th of January attack, have failed in their effort to convince a judge that they were simply caught up in the day's excitement. This despite Daryl having posted afterwards that there would be hangings on the front lawn. Zelensky fends off Newsmax interviewers. Trump questioned. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky dismissed the suggestion that Donald Trump could have stopped Russia from invading his country in an interview with Newsmax. Speaking on Tuesday with anchor Rob Schmidt, the Ukrainian leader said he cannot predict what would have happened if Mr. Trump was still U.S. president. Schmidt proposed, "There are many Americans that believe that if somebody like Donald Trump was still in the White House that this invasion would not have happened. What is your position? I am sorry if I'll be saying something that you don't like, but for us as the country in war, it doesn't matter whether it's Democrats or Republicans, Mr. Zelensky. It's the people of the United States that support us." Trump ally booed off stage in Arizona. Arizona Representative Debbie Lesko on last week turned a high school graduation speech into a political spectacle that induced parents and students to heckle her until she left the stage. Ms. Lesko, a third-term Republican who represents Arizona's 8th District, was speaking at the Arizona Virtual Academy graduation ceremony when audience members began shouting at her, telling her "you need to go or there's no place for this." After she began polling her audience on hot-button issues such as student loan for the Congresswoman responded, "Wow, no freedom of speech here." Kinzinger celebrates work against Trump endorsees. Retiring GOP Congressman Adam Kinzinger, one of his party's most caustic critics of Donald Trump, has been ramping up his efforts to organize and fundraise against hard-right candidates endorsed by the former president. And some on the right are now blaming him for tanking Trump allies in recent primaries, something Mr. Kinzinger is clearly happy to take credit for. Father and son who entered Capitol on Jan 6 faced sentencing. Daryl Johnson and his son Dan are soon to find out their sentences for their behavior on January 6, 2021. When they entered the U.S. Capitol along with a horde of Trump supporters. As CBS's Scott MacFarlane reports, the men are using one of the most common arguments deployed by convicted insurrectionists seeking lighter sentences, that they did not show up to D.C. with the intent of storming the Capitol and simply got swept up. Herschel Walker complains Trump is taking credit for his candidacy. Herschel Walker, the highly controversial GOP Senate nominee in Georgia, is one of Donald Trump's successful midterm endorsees, but he is not so loyal as to give the president full credit for his success. Mr. Walker spoke with Atlanta rapper Killer Mike, one half of the musical duo Run the Jewels, and told him that Mr. Trump did not recruit him to run against incumbent Senator Raphael Warnock this year. "President Trump never asked me," he said. Rather, Mr. Walker said that he heard the idea that Mr. Trump persuaded him to run for Senate on television. "So, I'm mad at him because he never asked," Mr. Walker said. "But he's taking credit that he asked." Capitol rioter turned in by former lover pleads guilty. A Capitol rioter who allegedly called his former partner a moron for refusing to see the election was stolen from Donald Trump has now pleaded, "If you can't see the election was stolen, you're a moron," Richard Machete allegedly messaged his former partner on 6 January. They later informed police of his presence at the riot, reports said. On Tuesday, he pleaded guilty to a felony and charges of trespassing, violent entry and disorderly conduct, and obstruction of Congress, NBC News reported. He will be sentenced at a later date. Zelensky rubbishes claims Trump could have prevented Russian war. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky appeared to rubbish the suggestion that Donald Trump could have prevented Russia's war on his country in an interview with a newsman. "I am sorry if I'll be saying something that you don't like, but for us as the country in war, it doesn't matter whether it's Democrats or Republicans," Mr. Zelensky told Ropsh. "It's the people of the United States that support us." He went on to say that anybody could become the U.S. president. Some might like Ukraine more, some less. Some might have respect for Putin, and some might not, but the values our country is fighting for are definitely the ones shared by the U.S. Mr. Trump has praised Russia President Vladimir Putin in the past, and on the day Ukraine was invaded claimed, "If I were in office, this deadly Ukraine situation would never have happened." The Republican was impeached by the House in 2019 following allegations he wrongfully sought political help and pressured Ukraine to get himself elected. He was later cleared.